Okay. This movie is being live streamed, but first I'm going to stop the live stream for a second. Then I'm going to share the screen. Yeah, I know I'm sharing it too. Preview. Here we go. I got to tell you, this movie is being live streamed, but first I'm going to stop the live stream for a second. Then I'm going to share the screen. I know I'm sharing it too. Preview. Here we go. I got to tell you, this movie is being live streamed, but first I'm going to stop the live stream for a second. Then I'm going to share the screen. I know I'm sharing it too. Preview.
Assembly Bill No. 168 Assemblyman Thompson and Torres. Results in the bodily injury of an employee of the school or sells or distributes any controlled substance in certain circumstances. NRS 392.466, existing law authorizes the expulsion or suspension of a pupil who, 1. is deemed a habitual disciplinary problem, or 2. participates in a program of special education in certain circumstances upon review of the Board of Trustees of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled. NRS 392.466, 392.467, existing law also authorizes the Board of Trustees of a school district to expel or suspend a pupil from a public school in the school district, but prohibits the Board of Trustees from expelling, suspending or removing a pupil solely because the pupil is deemed a truant. NRS 392.467, Section 3.3 of this bill, with certain exceptions, requires a school to provide a plan of action based on restorative justice to a pupil before expelling the pupil. Section 3.3 requires the Department of Education to develop examples of such a plan of action and post certain information on its internet website. Sections 7 and 8 of this bill prohibit the permanent expulsion of a pupil who is not more than 10 years of age except in certain limited circumstances. Section 7 authorizes the suspension or permanent expulsion of a pupil who is at least 11 years of age only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and approved the action in accordance with its policy. Section 7 requires a public school to provide a plan of action based on restorative justice to a pupil who engages in certain actions and is at least 11 years of age before expelling or suspending the pupil. Section 7 also requires a public school that removes the pupil from school and places the pupil in another school to explain what services will be provided to address the specific needs and behaviors of the pupil at the new school that the current school is unable to provide. Section 7 requires the school district of the current school of the pupil to coordinate with the new school or the school district of the new school to ensure the new school has the resources necessary to accommodate the pupil. Section 8 prohibits the Board of Trustees of a school district from expelling, suspending or removing a pupil solely for offenses related to attendance. Section 8 also requires a school to conduct an investigation before taking certain disciplinary actions in certain circumstances. Sections 4 and 5 of this bill make conforming changes. The existing law requires the principal of each public school to establish a plan for the discipline of pupils. NRS 392.4644, Section 5.5 of this bill instead requires the Board of Trustees of each school district to establish such a plan. The existing law authorizes the school in which a pupil who is suspended is enrolled to develop a plan of behavior for the pupil. NRS 392.4655, Section 6 of this bill instead requires such a school to develop a plan of behavior and allows the parent or guardian of a pupil to choose for the pupil not to participate in the plan of behavior. 80th Session, 2019. 2. Existing law prohibits a pupil who is participating in a program of special education from being suspended from school for more than 10 days or permanently expelled unless the Board of Trustees of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action complies with federal law relating to pupils with disabilities. NRS 392.466, 392.467, Sections 7 and 8 reduce the number of days that such a pupil can be suspended from 10 to 5. The existing law authorizes the expulsion, suspension or removal of a pupil of a charter school or university school for profoundly gifted pupils in certain circumstances. NRS 388A.495, 388C.150, Sections 1 and 2 of this bill apply similar provisions relating to the discipline of such pupils as are applied to pupils in other public schools by Sections 3, 7, and 8. Section 3.7 of this bill requires public schools to collect data on the suspension, expulsion, and removal of pupils from a school and report such data to the Board of Trustees of the school district each quarter. Explanation: matter in bolded italics is new. Matter between brackets, omitted material is material to be omitted. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1. NRS 388A.495 is hereby amended to read as follows. 388A.495 1. A governing body of a charter school shall adopt A. Written rules of behavior required of and prohibited for pupils attending the charter school, and B. Appropriate punishments for violations of the rules. 2. Except as otherwise provided in subsection 3, if suspension or expulsion of a pupil is used as a punishment for a violation of the rules, the charter school shall ensure that, before the suspension or expulsion, the pupil and, if the pupil is under 18 years of age, the parent or guardian of the pupil, has been given notice of the charges against him or her, an explanation of the evidence and an opportunity for a hearing. The provisions of Chapter 241 of NRS do not apply to any hearing conducted pursuant to this section. Such a hearing must be closed to the public. 3. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age and who poses a continuing danger to persons or property or an ongoing threat of disrupting the academic process, or who is selling or distributing any controlled substance, or who is found to be in possession of a dangerous weapon as provided in NRS 392.466 may be removed from the charter school immediately upon being given an explanation of the reasons for his or her removal and pending proceedings, which must be conducted as soon as practicable after removal, for suspension or expulsion of the pupil. Only after the 80th session, 2019. 3. Charter school has made a reasonable effort to complete a plan of action based on restorative justice with the pupil in accordance with the provisions of NRS 392.466 and 392.467. 4. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age and who is enrolled in a charter school and participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, other than a pupil who receives early intervening services, may, in accordance with the procedural policy adopted by the governing body of the charter school for such matters, and only after the governing body has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 and SEQ, B, A, suspended from the charter school pursuant to this section for not more than 5 days for each occurrence. B, suspended from the charter school for more than 10 days or permanently expelled from school pursuant to this section. Only after the governing body has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at SEC. 5. A copy of the rules of behavior Prescribed punishments and procedures to be followed in imposing punishments must be A. Distributed to each pupil at the beginning of the school year and to each new pupil who enters school during the year. B. Available for public inspection at the charter school. 6. The governing body of a charter school may adopt rules relating to the truancy of pupils who are enrolled in the charter school if the rules are at least as restrictive as the provisions governing truancy set forth in NRS 392.130 to 392.220, inclusive. If the governing body adopts rules governing truancy, it shall include the rules and the written rules adopted by the governing body pursuant to subsection 1. Sec. 2. NRS 388C.150 is hereby amended to read as follows. 388C.150.1. The governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted pupils shall adopt A. Written rules of behavior for pupils enrolled in the university school, including, without limitation, prohibited acts, and B. Appropriate punishments for violations of the rules. 2. Except as otherwise provided in subsection 3, if suspension or expulsion of a pupil is used as a punishment for a violation of the rules, the university school for profoundly gifted pupils shall ensure that, before the suspension or expulsion, the pupil has been given notice of the charges against him or her, and 80th session, 2019. For explanation of the evidence and an opportunity for a hearing. The provisions of Chapter 241 of NRS do not apply to any hearing conducted pursuant to this section. Such a hearing must be closed to the public. 3. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age and who poses a continuing danger to persons or property or an ongoing threat of disrupting the academic process, or who is selling or distributing any controlled substance, or who is found to be in possession of a dangerous weapon as provided in NRS 392.466 may be removed from the university school for profoundly gifted pupils immediately upon being given an explanation of the reasons for the removal of the pupil and pending proceedings, which must be conducted as soon as practicable after removal, for his or her suspension or expulsion. Only after the university school for profoundly gifted pupils has made a reasonable effort to complete a plan of action based on restorative justice with the pupil in accordance with the provisions of NRS 392.466 and 392.467. 4. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age and who is enrolled in a university school for profoundly gifted pupils and participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, other than a pupil who receives early intervening services, may, in accordance with the procedural policy adopted by the governing body of the university school for such matters, and only after the governing body has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 and SEQ, B, A, suspended from the university school pursuant to this section for not more than 5 days for each occurrence. B, suspended from the university school for more than 10 days or permanently expelled from school pursuant to this section. Only after the governing body has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at SEC. 5. A copy of the rules of behavior, prescribed punishments and procedures to be followed in imposing punishments must be A. Distributed to each pupil at the beginning of the school year and to each new pupil who enters the university school for profoundly gifted pupils during the year. B. Available for public inspection at the university school. 6. The governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted pupils may adopt rules relating to the truancy of pupils who are enrolled in the university school if the rules are at least as 80th session, 2019. 5 restrictive as the provisions governing truancy set forth in NRS 392.130 to 392.220, inclusive. If the governing body adopts rules governing truancy, it shall include the rules in the written rules adopted by the governing body pursuant to subsection 1. Sec. 3. Chapter 392 of NRS is hereby amended by adding thereto the provisions set forth as sections 3.3 and 3.7 of this Act. Sec. 3.3. 1. Except as otherwise provided in NRS 392.466, and to the extent practicable, a public school shall provide a plan of action based on restorative justice before expelling a pupil from school. 2. The department shall develop one or more examples of a plan of action which may include, without limitation, A. Positive behavioral interventions and support, B. A plan for behavioral intervention, C. A referral to a team of student support, D. A referral to an individualized education program team, E. A referral to appropriate community-based services, and F. A conference with the principal of the school or his or her designee and any other appropriate personnel. 3. The department may approve a plan of action based on restorative justice that meets the requirements of this section submitted by a public school. 4. The department shall post on its internet website a guidance document that includes, without limitation, A description of the requirements of this section and section 3.7 of this Act, B. A timeline for implementation of the requirements of this section and section 3.7 of this Act by a public school, C. One or more models of restorative justice and best practices relating to restorative justice, D. A curriculum for professional development relating to restorative justice and references for one or more consultants or presenters qualified to provide additional information or training relating to restorative justice, and E. One or more examples of a plan of action based on restorative justice developed pursuant to subsection 2. 5. The department shall adopt regulations necessary to carry out the provisions of this section. 6. As used in this section, A. Individualized education program team has the meaning ascribed to it in 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1414 D1B. 80th session, 2019. 6b. Restorative justice means non-punitive intervention and support provided by the school to a pupil to improve the behavior of the pupil and remedy any harm caused by the pupil. Sec. 3.7. Each public school shall collect data on the discipline of pupils. Such data must include, without limitation, the number of expulsions and suspensions of pupils and the number of placements of pupils in another school. Such data must be disaggregated into subgroups of pupils and the types of offense. The principal of each public school shall 1. Review the data and take appropriate action, and 2. Report the data to the Board of Trustees of the school district each quarter. Sec. 4. NRS 392.4634 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.4634-1. Except as otherwise provided in subsection 3, a pupil enrolled in kindergarten or grades 1 to 8, inclusive, may not be disciplined, including, without limitation, pursuant to NRS 392.466, for A. Simulating a firearm or dangerous weapon while playing, or B. Wearing clothing or accessories that depict a firearm or dangerous weapon or express an opinion regarding a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, unless it substantially disrupts the educational environment. 2. Simulating a firearm or dangerous weapon includes, without limitation, A. Brandishing a partially consumed pastry or other food item to simulate a firearm or dangerous weapon. B. Possessing a toy firearm or toy dangerous weapon that is 2 inches or less in length. C. Possessing a toy firearm or toy dangerous weapon made of plastic building blocks which snap together. D. Using a finger or hand to simulate a firearm or dangerous weapon. E. Drawing a picture or possessing an image of a firearm or dangerous weapon. And F. Using a pencil, pen or other writing or drawing implement to simulate a firearm or dangerous weapon. 3. A pupil who simulates a firearm or dangerous weapon may be disciplined when disciplinary action is consistent with a policy adopted by the Board of Trustees of the school district, and such simulation, A, substantially disrupts learning by pupils or substantially disrupts the educational environment at the school, B, causes bodily harm to another person, or 80th session, 2019. 7C places another person in reasonable fear of bodily harm. 4. Except as otherwise provided in subsection 5, a school, school district, board of trustees of a school district or other entity shall not adopt any policy, ordinance or regulation which conflicts with this section. 5. The provisions of this section shall not be construed to prohibit a school from establishing and enforcing a policy requiring pupils to wear a school uniform as authorized pursuant to NRS 386.855. 6. As used in this section, a dangerous weapon has the meaning ascribed to it in paragraph B of subsection 911 of NRS 392.466. B. Firearm has the meaning ascribed to it in paragraph C of subsection 911 of NRS 392.466. Sec. 5. NRS 392.4635 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.4635 1. The Board of Trustees of each school district shall establish a policy that prohibits the activities of criminal gangs on school property. 2. The policy established pursuant to subsection 1 may include, without limitation, A. The provision of training for the prevention of the activities of criminal gangs on school property. B. If the policy includes training, 1. A designation of the grade levels of the pupils who must receive the training. 2. A designation of the personnel who must receive the training, including, without limitation, personnel who are employed in schools at the grade levels designated pursuant to subparagraph 1. The Board of Trustees of each school district shall ensure that the training is provided to the pupils and personnel designated in the policy. C. Provisions which prohibit 1. A pupil from wearing any clothing or carrying any symbol on school property that denotes membership in or an affiliation with a criminal gang, and 2. Any activity that encourages participation in a criminal gang or facilitates illegal acts of a criminal gang. D. Provisions which provide for the suspension or expulsion pursuant to NRS 392.466 and 392.467 of pupils who violate the policy. 3. The Board of Trustees of each school district may develop the policy required pursuant to subsection 1 in consultation with 80th session, 2019. 8. Local law enforcement agencies. B. School police officers, if any. C. Persons who have experience regarding the actions and activities of criminal gangs. D. Organizations which are dedicated to alleviating criminal gangs or assisting members of criminal gangs who wish to disassociate from the gang. And E. Any other person deemed necessary by the Board of Trustees. 4. As used in this section, criminal gang has the meaning ascribed to it in NRS 213.1263. Sec. 5.5. NRS 392.4644 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.4644 1. The principal board of trustees of each public school district shall establish a plan to provide for the progressive discipline of pupils and on-site review of disciplinary decisions. The plan must, A, be developed with the input and participation of teachers, school administrators and other educational personnel and support personnel who are employed at, by the school, district, and the parents and guardians of pupils who are enrolled in the schools within the school district. B. Be consistent with the written rules of behavior prescribed in accordance with NRS 392.463. C. Include, without limitation, provisions designed to address the specific disciplinary needs and concerns of B. Each school within the school district. D. Provide for the temporary removal of a pupil from a classroom or other premises of a public school in accordance with NRS 392.4645. E. Provide for the placement of a pupil in a different school within the school district in accordance with NRS 392.466. F. Include the names of any members of a committee to review the temporary alternative placement of pupils required by NRS 392.4647. G. Be posted on the internet website maintained by the school district. 2. On or before September 15th of each year, the principal of each public school shall A. Review the plan established by subsection 1 in consultation with the teachers, school administrators and other educational personnel and support personnel who are employed at the school, and the parents and guardians of pupils and the pupils who are enrolled in the school. 80th session, 2019. 9B. Based upon the review, recommend to the Board of Trustees of the school district revisions to the plan as recommended by the teachers, school administrators and other educational personnel and support personnel, and the parents and guardians of pupils and the pupils who are enrolled in the school. If necessary, C. Post a copy of the plan or the revised plan, as applicable, as provided by the school district, on the internet website maintained by the school or school district. And D. Distribute to each teacher, school administrator and all educational support personnel who are employed at or assigned to the school a written or electronic copy of the plan or the revised plan, as applicable, and E. Submit a copy of the plan or the revised plan, as applicable, to the superintendent of schools of the school district, as provided by the school district. 3. On or before October 15th of each year, the superintendent of schools of each school district shall submit a report to the Board of Trustees of the school district that includes A. A compilation of the plans submitted pursuant to this subsection by each school within the school district. B. The name of each principal, if any, who has not complied with the requirements of this section. 4. On or before November 15th of each year, the Board of Trustees of each school district shall A. Submit a written report to the Superintendent of Public Instruction based upon the compilation submitted pursuant to subsection 3 that reports the progress of each school within the district in complying with the requirements of this section, and B. Post a copy of the report on the internet website maintained by the school district. Sec. 6. NRS 392.4655 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.4655-1. Except as otherwise provided in this section, a principal of a school shall deem a pupil enrolled in the school a habitual disciplinary problem if the school has written evidence which documents that in one school year, A. The pupil has threatened or extorted, or attempted to threaten or extort, another pupil or a teacher or other personnel employed by the school 2 or more times, or the pupil has a record of 5 suspensions from the school for any reason, and B. The pupil has not entered into and participated in a plan of behavior pursuant to subsection 5. 80th session, 2019. 10. 2. At least one teacher of a pupil who is enrolled in elementary school and at least 2 teachers of a pupil who is enrolled in junior high, middle school or high school may request that the principal of the school deem a pupil a habitual disciplinary problem. Upon such a request, the principal of the school shall meet with each teacher who made the request to review the pupil's record of discipline. If, after the review, the principal of the school determines that the provisions of subsection 1 do not apply to the pupil, a teacher who submitted a request pursuant to this subsection may appeal that determination to the Board of Trustees of the school district. Upon receipt of such a request, the Board of Trustees shall review the initial request and determination pursuant to the procedure established by the Board of Trustees for such matters. 3. If a pupil is suspended, the school in which the pupil is enrolled shall provide written notice to the parent or legal guardian of the pupil that contains A. A description of the act committed by the pupil and the date on which the act was committed, B. An explanation that if the pupil receives 5 suspensions on his or her record during the current school year and has not entered into and participated in a plan of behavior pursuant to subsection 5, the pupil will be deemed a habitual disciplinary problem. C. An explanation that, pursuant to subsection 3.5 of NRS 392.466, a pupil who is deemed a habitual disciplinary problem may be 1. Suspended from school for a period not to exceed 1 school semester as determined by the seriousness of the acts which were the basis for the discipline, or 2. Expelled from school under extraordinary circumstances as determined by the principal of the school. D. If the pupil has a disability and is participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, an explanation of the effect of subsection 8.10 of NRS 392.466, including, without limitation, that if it is determined in accordance with 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1415 that the pupil's behavior is not a manifestation of the pupil's disability, he or she may be suspended or expelled from school in the same manner as a pupil without a disability, and a summary of the provisions of subsection 5. 4. A school shall provide the notice required by subsection 3 for each suspension on the record of a pupil during the school year. Such notice must be provided at least 7 days before the school deems the pupil a habitual disciplinary problem. 80th session, 2019. 11. 5. If a pupil is suspended, the school in which the pupil is enrolled shall develop, in consultation with the pupil and the parent or legal guardian of the pupil, a plan of behavior for the pupil. The parent or legal guardian of the pupil may choose for the pupil not to participate in the plan of behavior. If the parent or legal guardian of the pupil chooses for the pupil not to participate, the school shall inform the parent or legal guardian of the consequences of not participating in the plan of behavior. Such a plan must be designed to prevent the pupil from being deemed a habitual disciplinary problem and may include, without limitation, a plan for graduating if the pupil is deficient in credits and not likely to graduate according to schedule. B. Information regarding schools with a mission to serve pupils who have been 1. Expelled or suspended from a public school, including, without limitation, a charter school, or 2. Deemed to be a habitual disciplinary problem pursuant to this section. C. A voluntary agreement by the parent or legal guardian who attends school with his or her child. D. A voluntary agreement by the pupil and the pupil's parent or legal guardian to attend counseling, programs or services available in the school district or community. E. A voluntary agreement by the pupil and the pupil's parent or legal guardian that the pupil will attend summer school, intersession school or school on Saturday, if any of those alternatives are offered by the school district. 6. If a pupil commits the same act for which notice was provided pursuant to subsection 3 after he or she enters into a plan of behavior pursuant to subsection 5, the pupil shall be deemed to have not successfully completed the plan of behavior and may be deemed a habitual disciplinary problem. 7. A pupil may, pursuant to the provisions of this section, enter into one plan of behavior per school year. 8. The parent or legal guardian of a pupil who has entered into a plan of behavior with a school pursuant to this section may appeal to the Board of Trustees of the school district a determination made by the school concerning the contents of the plan of behavior or action taken by the school pursuant to the plan of behavior. Upon receipt of such a request, the Board of Trustees of the school district shall review the determination in accordance with the procedure established by the Board of Trustees for such matters. 80th session, 2019. 12, Sec. 7. NRS 392.466 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.466-1. Except as otherwise provided in this section, any pupil who commits a battery which results in the bodily injury of an employee of the school or who sells or distributes any controlled substance while in the premises of any public school, at an activity sponsored by a public school or on any school bus must For the first occurrence, be suspended or expelled from that school, although the pupil may be placed in another kind of school, for at least a period equal to one semester for that school. For a second occurrence, the pupil must be permanently expelled from that school and who is at least 11 years of age shall meet with the school and his or her parent or legal guardian. The school shall provide a plan of action based on restorative justice to the parent or legal guardian of the pupil. The pupil may be expelled from the school, in which case the pupil shall A. Enroll in a private school pursuant to Chapter 394 of NRS, become an adopted child or be homeschooled, or B. Enroll in a program of independent study provided pursuant to NRS 389.155 for pupils who have been suspended or expelled from public school or a program of distance education provided pursuant to NRS 388.820 to 388.874, inclusive, if the pupil qualifies for enrollment and is accepted for enrollment in accordance with the requirements of the applicable program. 2. An employee who is a victim of a battery which results in the bodily injury of an employee of the school may appeal to the school the plan of action provided pursuant to subsection 1 if A. The employee feels any actions taken pursuant to such plan are inappropriate, and B. For a pupil who committed the battery and is participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and determined that such an appeal is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 et sec. 3. Except as otherwise provided in this section, any pupil who is found in possession of a firearm or dangerous weapon while on the premises of any public school, at an activity sponsored by a public school or on any school bus must, for the first occurrence, be expelled from the school for a period of not less than 1 year, although the pupil may be placed in another kind of school for a period not to exceed the period of the expulsion. For a second occurrence, the pupil must be permanently expelled from the school and 80th session, 2019. 13. A. Enroll in a private school pursuant to Chapter 394 of NRS, become an opt-in child or be homeschooled, or B. Enroll in a program of independent study provided pursuant to NRS 389.155 for pupils who have been suspended or expelled from public school or a program of distance education provided pursuant to NRS 388.820 to 388.874, inclusive, if the pupil qualifies for enrollment and is accepted for enrollment in accordance with the requirements of the applicable program. 3. 4. If a school is unable to retain a pupil in the school pursuant to subsection 1 for the safety of any person or because doing so would not be in the best interest of the pupil may be suspended, expelled or placed in another school. If a pupil is placed in another school, the current school of the pupil shall explain what services will be provided to the pupil at the new school that the current school is unable to provide to address the specific needs and behaviors of the pupil. The school district of the current school of the pupil shall coordinate with the new school or the Board of Trustees of the school district of the new school to create a plan of action based on restorative justice for the pupil and to ensure that any resources required to execute the plan of action based on restorative justice are available at the new school. 5. Except as otherwise provided in this section, if a pupil is deemed a habitual disciplinary problem pursuant to NRS 392.4655, the pupil is at least 11 years of age and the school has made a reasonable effort to complete a plan of action based on restorative justice with the pupil may be A. Suspended from the school for a period not to exceed 1 school semester as determined by the seriousness of the acts which were the basis for the discipline, or B. Expelled from the school under extraordinary circumstances as determined by the principal of the school. 4. 6. If the pupil is expelled, or the period of the pupil's suspension is for 1 school semester, the pupil must A. Enroll in a private school pursuant to Chapter 394 of NRS, become an adopted child or be homeschooled, or B. Enroll in a program of independent study provided pursuant to NRS 389.155 for pupils who have been suspended or expelled from public school, or a program of distance education provided pursuant to NRS 388.820 to 388.874, inclusive, if the pupil qualifies for enrollment and is accepted for enrollment in accordance with the requirements of the applicable program. 5. 7. The superintendent of schools of a school district may, for good cause shown in a particular case in that school district. 80th session, 2019. 14. Allow modification to a suspension or expulsion requirement, as applicable, of subsection 1, 2 or 3 pursuant to subsections 1 to 5, inclusive, if such modification is set forth in writing. The superintendent shall allow such a modification if the superintendent determines that a plan of action based on restorative justice may be used successfully. 6. 8. This section does not prohibit a pupil from having in his or her possession a knife or firearm with the approval of the principal of the school. A principal may grant such approval only in accordance with the policies or regulations adopted by the Board of Trustees of the school district. 7. Any pupil in grades 1 to 6, inclusive, except a pupil who has been found to have possessed a firearm in violation of subsection 2. 9. Except as otherwise provided in this section, a pupil who is not more than 10 years of age must not be permanently expelled from school. In extraordinary circumstances, a school may request an exception to this subsection from the Board of Trustees of the school district. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age may be suspended from school or permanently expelled from school pursuant to this section only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and approved this action in accordance with the procedural policy adopted by the board for such issues. 8. 10. A pupil who is at least 11 years of age and who is participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, other than a pupil who receives early intervening services, may, in accordance with the procedural policy adopted by the Board of Trustees of the school district for such matters, and only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at SEQ, B, A, suspended from school pursuant to this section for not more than 5 days. Such a suspension may be imposed pursuant to this paragraph for each occurrence of conduct proscribed by subsection 1. B. Suspended from school for more than 10 days or permanently expelled from school pursuant to this section. Only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at SEC. 80th session, 2019. 15, 9, 11. As used in this section, A. Battery has the meaning ascribed to it in paragraph A of subsection 1 of NRS 200.481. B. Dangerous weapon includes, without limitation, a blackjack, slingshot, billy, sand club, sandbag, metal knuckles, dirk or dagger, a nunchaku or trefoil, as defined in NRS 202.350. A butterfly knife or any other knife described in NRS 202.350, a switchblade knife as defined in NRS 202.265, or any other object which is used, or threatened to be used, in such a manner and under such circumstances as to pose a threat of, or cause, bodily injury to a person. C. Firearm includes, without limitation, any pistol, revolver, shotgun, explosive substance or device, and any other item included within the definition of a firearm in 18 U.S.C. paragraph 921, as that section existed on July 1, 1995. D. Restorative justice has the meaning ascribed to it in subsection 6 of section 3.3 of this act. 10. 12. The provisions of this section do not prohibit a pupil who is suspended or expelled from enrolling in a charter school that is designed exclusively for the enrollment of pupils with disciplinary problems if the pupil is accepted for enrollment by the charter school pursuant to NRS 388A.453 or 388A.456. Upon request, the governing body of a charter school must be provided with access to the records of the pupil relating to the pupil's suspension or expulsion in accordance with applicable federal and state law before the governing body makes a decision concerning the enrollment of the pupil. Sec. 8. NRS 392.467 is hereby amended to read as follows. 392.467(1). Except as otherwise provided in subsections 4, 5, and 6 and NRS 392.466, the Board of Trustees of a school district may authorize the suspension or expulsion of any pupil who is at least 11 years of age from any public school within the school district, except as otherwise provided in NRS 392.466. A pupil who is not more than 10 years of age must not be permanently expelled from school. 2. Except as otherwise provided in subsection 5, 6, no pupil may be suspended or expelled until the pupil has been given notice of the charges against him or her, an explanation of the evidence and an opportunity for a hearing, except that a pupil who poses a continuing danger to persons or property or an ongoing threat of disrupting the academic process or who is selling or distributing any controlled substance or is found to be in possession of a firearm or a dangerous weapon as provided in NRS 392.466 may be removed. 80th session, 2019. 16. From the school immediately upon being given an explanation of the reasons for his or her removal and pending proceedings to be conducted as soon as practicable after removal for the pupil's suspension or expulsion. 3. The Board of Trustees of a school district may authorize the expulsion, suspension or removal of a pupil who has been charged with a crime from the school at which the pupil is enrolled regardless of the outcome of any criminal or delinquency proceedings brought against the pupil only if the school A. conducts an independent investigation of the conduct of the pupil, and B. gives notice of the charges brought against the pupil by the school to the pupil. 4. The provisions of Chapter 241 of NRS do not apply to any hearing conducted pursuant to this section. Such hearings must be closed to the public. 4. 5. The Board of Trustees of a school district shall not authorize the expulsion, suspension or removal of any pupil from the public school system solely for offenses related to attendance or because the pupil is declared a truant or habitual truant in accordance with NRS 392.130 or 392.140. 5. 6. A pupil who is participating in a program of special education pursuant to NRS 388.419, other than a pupil who receives early intervening services, may, in accordance with the procedural policy adopted by the Board of Trustees of the school district for such matters, and only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at SEQ, B, A, suspended from school pursuant to this section for not more than 5 days. For each occurrence, B, suspended from school for more than 10 days or permanently expelled from school pursuant to this section. Only after the Board of Trustees of the school district has reviewed the circumstances and determined that the action is in compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 20 U.S.C. paragraph 1400 at Sec. 9. This act becomes effective on July 1st, 2019. 2019 session, 2019.
Well, was that informative or what? Now, they kept on referring to this section in the United States Code or whatever. And just to be an American means that you happen to know who you are. It's so devastating to understand. There's so many people just don't understand that if they don't get a basic education, they're not going far. But the mere fact that they're just dismissing all of these children, they could be expelled for being a habitual disciplinary problem. They could be expelled for being and I'm saying, well, what the hell are they going to do? And who's going to feed them for the rest of their lives? So we should listen to what the public law that the state of Nevada is attempting to, achieve, but they're not doing a very good job. So let's select all of the text. We're at the right place now. Select all. No, I don't want to do it. I want to do it from just this section 1400. Just go down. There we go. That's good enough. And let's see. Let's start talking. Hey.
Section 1400 Statute Regis Main Statute Subchapter I Part A 1400 Triple I Paragraph 1400 Short Title Findings Purposes A. Short title. This chapter may be cited as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Just let me know if you hear
B.
that.
Omitted. C. Findings. Congress finds the following. 1. Disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. 2. Before the date of enactment of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, Public Law 94-142, the educational needs of millions of children with disabilities were not being fully met because A. The children did not receive appropriate educational services, B. The children were excluded entirely from the public school system and from being educated with their peers. C. Undiagnosed disabilities prevented the children from having a successful educational experience, or D. A lack of adequate resources within the public school system forced families to find services outside the public school system. 3. Since the enactment and implementation of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, this chapter has been successful in ensuring children with disability and the families of such children access to a free, appropriate public education and in improving educational results for children with disabilities. 4. However, the implementation of this chapter has been impeded by low expectations and an insufficient focus on applying replicable research on proven methods of teaching and learning for children with disabilities. 5. Almost 30 years of research and experience has demonstrated that the education of children with disabilities can be made more effective by A. Having high expectations for such children and ensuring their access to a general education curriculum in the regular classroom to the maximum extent possible in order to I. Meet developmental goals and, to the maximum extent possible, the challenging expectations that have been established for all children, and 2. Be prepared to lead productive and independent adult lives to the maximum extent possible. B. Strengthening the role and responsibility of parents and ensuring that families of such children have meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their children at school and at home. C. Coordinating this chapter with other local, educational service agency, state, and federal school improvement efforts, including improvement efforts under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 6301 et seq. In order to ensure that such children benefit from such efforts and that special education can become a service for such children rather than a place where such children are sent. D. Providing appropriate special education and related services and aids and supports in the regular classroom to such children, Whenever appropriate, E. Supporting high-quality, intensive supervised preparation and professional development for all personnel who work with children with disabilities in order to ensure that such personnel have the skills and knowledge necessary to improve the academic achievement and functional performance of children with disabilities, including the use of scientifically based instructional practices to the maximum extent possible. F. Providing incentives for whole school approaches, scientifically based early reading programs, positive behavioral interventions and supports, and early intervening services to reduce the need to label children as disabled in order to address the learning and behavioral needs of such children. G. Focusing resources on teaching and learning while reducing paperwork and requirements that do not assist in improving educational results. And H. Supporting the development and use of technology, including assistive technology devices and assistive technology services, to maximize accessibility for children with disabilities. 6. While states, local educational agencies, and educational service agencies are primarily responsible for providing an education for all children with disabilities, it is in the national interest that the federal government have a supporting role in assisting state and local efforts to educate children with disabilities in order to improve results for such children and to ensure equal protection of the law. 7. A more equitable allocation of resources is essential for the federal government to meet its responsibility to provide an equal educational opportunity for all individuals. 8. Parents and schools should be given expanded opportunities to resolve their disagreements in positive and constructive ways. 9. Teachers, schools, local educational agencies, and states should be relieved of irrelevant and unnecessary paperwork burdens that do not lead to improved educational outcomes. 10a. The federal government must be responsive to the growing needs of an increasingly diverse society. B. America's ethnic profile is rapidly changing. In 2000, 1 of every 3 persons in the United States was a member of a minority group or was limited English proficient. C. Minority children comprise an increasing percentage of public school students. D. With such changing demographics, recruitment efforts for special education personnel should focus on increasing the participation of minorities in the teaching profession in order to provide appropriate role models with sufficient knowledge to address the special education needs of these students. 11a. The limited English proficient population is the fastest growing in our nation, and the growth is occurring in many parts of our nation. B. Studies have documented apparent discrepancies in the levels of referral and placement of limited English proficient children in special education. C. Such discrepancies pose a special challenge for special education in the referral of, assessment of, and provision of services for our nation's students from non-English language backgrounds. 12a. Greater efforts are needed to prevent the intensification of problems connected with mislabeling and high dropout rates among minority children with disabilities. B. More minority children continue to be served in special education than would be expected from the percentage of minority students in the general school population. C. African American children are identified as having intellectual disabilities and emotional disturbance at rates greater than their white counterparts. D. In the 1998-1999 school year, African American children represented just 14.8% of the population aged 6 through 21, but comprised 20.2% of all children with disabilities. 8 studies have found that schools with predominantly white students and teachers have placed disproportionately high numbers of their minority students into special education. 13a. As the number of minority students in special education increases, the number of minority teachers and related services personnel produced in colleges and universities continues to decrease. B. The opportunity for full participation by minority individuals, minority organizations, and historically Black colleges and universities in awards for grants and contracts, boards of organizations receiving assistance under this chapter, peer review panels, and training of professionals in the area of special education is essential to obtain greater success in the education of minority children with disabilities. 14. As the graduation rates for children with disabilities continue to climb, Providing effective transition services to promote successful post-school employment or education is an important measure of accountability for children with disabilities. D. Purposes. The purposes of this chapter are 1A. To ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. B. To ensure that the rights of children with disabilities and parents of such children are protected. And C. To assist states, localities, educational service agencies, and federal agencies to provide for the education of all children with disabilities. 2. To assist states in the implementation of a statewide, comprehensive, coordinated, multidisciplinary, interagency system of early intervention services for infants and toddlers with disabilities and their families. 3. To ensure that educators and parents have the necessary tools to improve educational results for children with disabilities by supporting system improvement activities, coordinated research and personnel preparation, coordinated technical assistance, dissemination, and support, and technology development.
Well, it's not to share. What I'm going to say is that, WestEd is the service provider for this state. And as I listen to WestEd provide support, they were trying to help Nevada get to where they want to go. Not necessarily creating opportunities for all children. And, this is 2023. I'm tired. I'm tired of listening to people who know that they're doing the wrong thing and yet have a hard time changing. And it's just the way it is. What should I say? I really don't know. We try and try and try again. Where am I at? I'm on YouTube. Am I on YouTube? I didn't sign off yet. But you'll find me. There we go. And it's just real. I really don't know. We try and try. And here we are. And we can sit here all night long trying to wonder what tomorrow's going to bring. Because we really don't know. And therein lies the dilemma. Who are you in 2023? Hello. And it's just a sad day anyway. When we can continue to listen to people who don't want to be obligated for all children. Again, still, they want the money. Hello, money, money. I'm over here. Don't forget about me. I can take my avatar off. Let me see. Ooh. I gotta go here. Right here. Don't show the avatar. There we go. Yeah. Okay. It's me. And this is, I gotta share my camera. And in America, it's you too. And the word is always going to be, each person, out of many, there's one. Out of one, there just may be none. So what are you willing to do in 2023? Help, like, subscribe, and follow me. I'm out here on Wisdom, Anchor, Parent Empowerment Hour, and Facebook, and Instagram, and anything. What is the awakening? What got bad? I can't breathe.